My name is Anna, and I'm 27 years old. Just a month ago, my world changed forever. My father, my only real family, passed away unexpectedly. He had always been my rock, my protector, and the one person who truly understood me. Now, I felt like I was standing alone in a storm, facing someone who seemed determined to destroy what little I had left, my stepmother, Linda. Linda had never been kind to me. Even when my dad was alive, she made it clear that I was just an unwanted reminder of his past. She had two kids of her own, my step-siblings, and they were always her priority. I never complained, though. I loved my dad too much to make things harder for him. But now, with him gone, Linda had changed. She was meaner, colder, and determined to push me out of my own home. One rainy morning, just a week after my dad's funeral, Linda called me into the living room. Her voice was sharp, and her eyes held no trace of sadness for the man we had just buried. "If you want to live here, you have to pay rent," she said bluntly. Her arms were crossed, and a smug smirk played on her lips, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "Otherwise, pack your things and leave." Her words hit me like a punch to the stomach. This was my dad's house, the house I grew up in. How could she act like I didn't belong here? For a moment, I wanted to scream at her, to remind her that I had just lost my father. But I held my tongue. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. "Rent?" I asked calmly, though my hands were trembling. "Why would I need to pay rent in my father's house?" Linda's smirk grew wider. "Your father's house? That's funny. This house is mine now. I'm the one in charge, Anna. So you either pay up or get out. I'm done carrying you." I stared at her, my mind racing. That's when I remembered something my dad had told me a few months ago. It was just the two of us in the kitchen, and he was unusually serious. "Anna," he had said, placing his hand on mine, "I've made sure you're protected, no matter what happens. Remember that." At the time, I didn't understand what he meant. But now, as Linda gloated about her ownership of the house, his words came rushing back. My dad had always been one step ahead, and I suddenly realized what he had done. Keeping my face neutral, I looked Linda in the eye. "I'll think about it," I said quietly, then walked out of the room. Inside, I was shaking with a mix of anger and hope. I needed to find out the truth, and fast. That evening, I searched through my dad's old files in the small office upstairs. My heart pounded as I flipped through papers, looking for anything that could prove what I suspected. And then, there it was, the title deed to the house. My dad had transferred it to my name months ago, just as I thought. Tears filled my eyes as I held the paper. He had protected me, even from beyond the grave. Linda had no idea that the house wasn't hers to control. For the first time since his death, I felt a spark of strength return to me. I wasn't powerless. But I didn't say anything to Linda, not yet. I had a plan to make sure she couldn't hurt me anymore. If she thought she could bully me out of my own home, she was in for a surprise. The next morning, Linda was in the kitchen, sipping coffee and chatting on the phone with one of her friends. She didn't even glance at me as I walked past her, acting like she had already won, like she'd already kicked me out. I couldn't help but smirk to myself. She had no idea what was coming. I decided to play it cool for now. There was no point in starting a fight until everything was ready. My dad had taught me to stay calm and think things through. So, I spent the next few days quietly gathering my things, preparing for the big move. I didn't want to stay in the house any longer than I had to. It didn't feel like home anymore. It felt like a battlefield. One evening, when Linda and her kids were out, I called a lawyer my dad had mentioned once. His name was Mr. Carter, and he was someone my dad trusted. I explained the situation to him and told him about the deed. "Anna, your father was a smart man," Mr. Carter said over the phone. "He made sure the transfer was airtight. Legally, the house is yours. If you want to sell it, there's nothing Linda can do to stop you." Hearing those words felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I thanked him and hung up, already picturing the look on Linda's face when she realized she was the one who would have to leave. A few days later, I found a real estate agent and started the process of selling the house. I kept everything quiet, not wanting Linda to catch wind of what was happening. I even had the agent schedule showings when I knew Linda would be out. It felt sneaky, but I didn't care. She had treated me like an outsider in my own home, and now she was going to learn what it felt like. By the end of the week, I had an offer on the house. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life. I signed the papers, and just like that, the house was no longer ours or hers. That evening, I sat in the living room, waiting for Linda to come home. She walked in with her usual smug expression, but it quickly disappeared when she saw me sitting there with a folder in my hands. "What's this?" Linda asked, narrowing her eyes. I stood up and handed her a copy of the sale agreement. "The house has been sold, Linda. It's not yours anymore, and it never was." Her face turned red, and for a moment, she just stared at the papers like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. Then she exploded. "You can't do this," she screamed. "This is my house. You think you can just sell it and walk away?" I crossed my arms and met her glare. "Actually, I can. The house was in my name, not yours. My dad made sure of that before he passed. And now it's gone. You can leave whenever you want." Her rage was almost comical. She yelled, she threatened, but in the end, there was nothing she could do. The house was no longer hers to control, and I was finally free of her. The next morning, I packed up my car and drove away from the place that had caused me so much pain. I didn't look back. My dad had given me a gift, not just the house, but the freedom to start over. And that's exactly what I planned to do. I headed for a new city, where no one knew my name, and I could build the life I wanted. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would change everything. Driving away from that house felt like shedding a heavy weight I had been carrying for years. The open road stretched ahead, and for the first time in my life, I felt truly free. My destination was a city I'd always dreamed of living in, Seattle. It was far enough away from my past and full of possibilities for a fresh start. When I arrived, the city welcomed me with its busy streets and a sense of endless opportunity. I checked into a small hotel for a few days while I figured out my next steps. With the money from the house sale sitting safely in my bank account, I didn't feel rushed. I finally had time to breathe and think about what I wanted to do with my life. One evening, as I strolled through a local park, I noticed an art gallery hosting an open event. Art had always been something I loved but never had the chance to explore. Curious, I decided to step inside. The gallery was buzzing with people admiring the work of local artists. As I wandered through the space, I felt a tap on my shoulder. Turning around, I met a man with a warm smile and kind eyes. He introduced himself as Daniel, the gallery owner. "You look like you belong here," he said, gesturing to the paintings. "Are you an artist?" I laughed nervously. "Not really. I just appreciate art. It's a nice escape." We struck up a conversation, and I found myself opening up about my recent struggles. Daniel listened intently, and by the end of the evening, he offered me an opportunity one never expected. "I'm always looking for new staff," he said. "If you're interested, we could use someone with your passion here." It felt like fate. I accepted his offer, excited to dive into something that sparked joy in me. Over the next few months, I settled into my new job at the gallery. Daniel became a mentor and a good friend, teaching me the ins and outs of the art world. For the first time, I felt like I was part of something meaningful. I was surrounded by beauty, creativity, and people who respected me for who I was. I also found a small apartment overlooking the waterfront. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine, a space where I could finally feel at home. Slowly, I started to rebuild my life, piece by piece. One day, while organizing an art exhibit, I met a man named Ethan. He was a quiet, thoughtful artist with a knack for painting landscapes that looked like dreams. We clicked instantly, bonding over late-night conversations and shared dreams of a brighter future. Ethan was different from anyone I'd ever met. He didn't see me as someone with baggage or scars. To him, I was strong, independent, and full of potential. His belief in me helped me see myself in a new light. After a year of friendship, laughter, and love, Ethan proposed. It wasn't a grand gesture, just the two of us in the park where we first met, but it was perfect. I said yes without hesitation, knowing this was the start of a life filled with happiness. Just when I thought my past was behind me, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Linda. She had tracked me down and was demanding a share of the money from the house sale, claiming she had been wronged. She threatened to take me to court if I didn't pay her. For a moment, the fear and anger returned. But then, I remembered the strength I had gained over the past year. I contacted my lawyer, Mr. Carter, who assured me that Linda didn't have a legal leg to stand on. He handled the situation swiftly, and I never heard from her again. One rainy afternoon, while unpacking an old box, I came across a letter from my father. It was tucked inside a book he had always kept on his nightstand. My hands trembled as I opened it, and tears filled my eyes as I read his words. Anna, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer with you. I want you to know how proud I am of you, and how much I love you. I transferred the house to your name because I knew you would need it one day. Use it to build the life you deserve, one filled with joy, love, and freedom. Always remember, you're stronger than you think. Love, Dad. His words were like a warm hug from the past, reminding me of the love and support that had always been there. I framed the letter and placed it on my bedside table as a daily reminder of where I came from and how far I had come. Life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. Ethan and I built a life together in Seattle, surrounded by art, love, and the promise of a bright future. Every step of the journey reminded me of my father's wisdom and strength, which lived on in me. As I looked out over the water from our small apartment, I smiled. My story wasn't just about loss. It was about resilience, growth, and finding happiness in the most unexpected places.